Welcome to the uncontroversial looking BMW M4 competition pack. This is a 2017 model, and I'm a very lucky guy to be driving this car today because it is one hell of a beast.
Chuki got the sauce, bitch.
So the previous generation of M3 was the E90, E92 generation of chassis, and in that car they had the naturally aspirated high revving V8 engine, last of its kind really. And in this generation, the F chassis, BMW ditched the V8 for a inline 6 twin turbocharged S55 engine, which is buttery smooth. Really, it can't be faulted for what it is because it's a masterpiece of an engine. If you know anything about BMWs, they're great at making inline 6 engines. So let's get a couple of specs out of the way. It's a 3-liter turbocharged inline 6, making about 444 horsepower and about the same in torque. I'll have the figures down below. But man, does it ever put the power down really well. So I have the car in M2 mode as well as driver 3 program. I don't know, there's a lot of jargon with this car. Basically, I have it in all the top settings, and I can confirm it's very good. So having everything in Sport Plus mode, the throttle response is instantaneous. The power band is so linear that it just pulls all the way to red line, to which then you have these lightning quick shifts. Here, I'll just drop down a gear. So we're at 3,000 RPM, which is pretty low. Okay, wait, let's go to 2,500 RPM. So I'll put my foot down and we'll see how well the engine responds to it. So a little bit of lag, but we're in the power band now, baby. And I'm a very lucky guy to be driving. Let's talk about the handling a little bit. Now, BMW, if they're known for one thing and one thing alone, it's driving dynamics. Now, one thing that's unique to the brand is that across the board, whether it be their SUVs or their luxury sedans, they all have a specific driving feel. And if I have to explain the feeling further, it really comes down to the steering. The handling feel is just so much more weighted compared to any other vehicle brand. And that specific reason alone is why I tend to like driving BMWs more. But I think the reason why I tend to really like it is that I feel like it really communicates the road surface very well. I can really put the car exactly where I want to. It just becomes that much more predictable. And having the steering feel more heavier, I find that I don't have to really twitch at the steering wheel too much. My movements are a lot more smoother. The competition pack, we have the M dynamic suspension, and it really does a good job of being able to change its characteristics whether you're in comfort or in Sport Plus. In Sport Plus, it gives a very stiff feeling, it communicates the road surface very well, and equally so if you're in comfort, you're able to drive it around normally. You can go over potholes, no big deal. M mode is off. And it's relatively a nice ride actually. It's very comfortable. You can probably drive this every day. It wouldn't be my first choice, but if you're really about that coupe life, it's not a bad choice. Alright, so let's talk about the sounds that this car makes. It's alright. But when it comes down to the actual exhaust note, I have to say that I'm not a big fan of it, but it's not bad. My personal preference with inline-6 engines is that really smooth, high-pitched sound like a Toyota Supra, the 2JZ engine. My favorite part about the exhaust has to be the pops. It just pops like nothing else. It's like literally like an AK-47. Ta 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 ta. And I love the fact that there's no soft limiter. You could just rev it up all the way and it'll just pop the whole way through. Let's talk about the styling of this car. Really, it's such a beautiful car. I love the proportions. It's just such a nice coupe. If you're a fan of coupes, it really doesn't get better than this. And for sure later on, this car is going to be a future classic, especially since the G80 came out. If there was any bit of the styling that was lacking, I have to say that it has to be on the interior side. Overall, it's a fairly minimalistic interior, and that's not really why you're buying this car. It's more on the whole driving feel and the driving dynamics of this car. The sport seats in this, which are special to the competition package, do really grip you very well. But in terms of adjustability, there isn't much really. There's a little bit of bolstering inflation that you get, and the back is the fixed back design. After a while, I would say I would probably feel a little uncomfortable in this seat. One thing I have to mention about the user experience is how BMW decided to go about their drive mode selectors. Now you have a button for the throttle response, you have a button for the suspension, you have a button for the handling, you have an M1 button, an M2 button, you have a button for the transmission. There's just too many buttons. I guess it's good from a configurability standpoint that you can really get it to how you want it. But in a car like this, you just want to get into it, and if you're feeling the mood, you just want to put it into Sport Plus and have everything go into Sport Plus. For example, I have to bring up Mercedes. In their drive mode selectors, they just have their regular comfort, their sport, Sport Plus, and their race modes. And if you want to configure specific aspects of the car, you have your individual mode. And it's just a much more cleaner and more intuitive system to use. So when it came down to doing the launch control, you have to turn off DSC. So I thought that putting it into M2 mode would do that automatically. I thought M2 mode, okay, it just covers everything, which it doesn't. You actually have to turn off DSC by itself. But one thing that I do like is that BMW have included the owner's manual, and it's very intuitive to use and to find specific tasks like the launch control sequence. Alright, so let's round out the BMW M4. It's a car that delivers great performance. It definitely feels faster than the 450 horsepower that it claims. The S55 engine is a very smooth engine. It loves to rev, great power band, and it builds power very linearly. But if you're looking at an example with mileage out of warranty, beware of the crank hub issue, because essentially if that goes, your engine's toast. I love that in the M4 you get that typical BMW handling feel. It's a very weighted setup. The chassis feels very well balanced, as well as there's a lot of mechanical grip. That's not to say that the M4 can't get sideways. It's a car that's very lively. It's able to break its tires loose very easily, but the M differential does a great job of being able to put the power down. Summing up the driving experience of the BMW M4, I have to say it's a car that I felt like I could really sharpen my driving skills with. And that's something I can't say about every car. So in that regard, it's a very special car. And in my opinion, it's probably one of the best looking cars of all time.